So if a law firm came to you today and said, "Hey, we want to use AI, but we're terrified," how would you advise them? What would be the steps that they want to go through to address that?
I think first they would probably want to do some general education about the platform. There's lots of webinars, books, white papers, podcasts on it. I'd probably educate themselves as much as they can. I'd read their state's local ethics rules. Most states these days have a AI ethics opinion, so they should probably look into that and see what that says. And then maybe consult with somebody in that space if they felt they still were uncomfortable in terms of what to do. And then once they have all the information and they've done their due diligence, they can go ahead and start, putting together an AI committee, putting together a written AI policy, and then start evaluating what their needs are and making demos and short-term licenses to see which platforms work best for them.
So you said that the lawyers that are most skeptical about AI, paradoxically, are probably the best qualified or the best potential users of AI. What did you mean by that?
Well, I think more experienced lawyers and lawyers that have a healthy concern or risk aversion toward it, like aren't going to jump in with both feet and not realize what the risks are. AI is a tool, but it's not a replacement for our judgment or how we see the world or how we make evaluations. And the more senior you are in the practice, the more cases you've handled, the better you can evaluate the output from your prompts, whatever platform you use, and determine this is a good or bad response, this is a good or bad data or output, and sort of separate the wheat from the chaff and decide how best to proceed.
So there are lawyers. I've seen some news stories out there, since we're on the AI subject, where somebody has brought something into court in a brief or some sort of, usually some kind of a brief, and it ended up coming out that this was a as AI generated brief. I've even saw one recently within the last month or so where somebody had an attorney had brought into court a brief and providing evidence, and the citations were wrong. Obviously, how widespread is that kind of thing? I'm not pointing figures, but how widespread do you think that is? Is that anecdotal, or is there a group of lawyers who are
I think to
blowing?
date, I think someone's been keeping track of this, or there's been several individuals or entities keeping track of it. And I think there's been at least 100, maybe even over 200 incidents in the U.S. alone where someone has cited a case that didn't exist or miscited a case because they overly relied on AI. So it's a problem, and I'm seeing more and more courts address it through various administrative orders and making parties enter certifications saying if they used AI that they double check the output and so forth.
So here's something else I had on my list here, and this one is you talked about a Latino tax. The pressure first generation professionals feel to financially support their extended family. And I actually have Latino, not in my blood, but in my family. And I do know that that exists. So can you talk about that? How did that shape your early career?
Yeah, I think this is true not only just for people of Latino background, but really anybody who's a sort of first generation professional in their families. They're the ones who somehow was able to break away and do better for themselves. And they obviously feel like they have familial obligations. They love their families. They want to make sure what's best for them. And they're the ones in the family with the resources. So they're the ones who are reaching into their pockets and helping uncles or aunts or parents or cousins or nieces or whomever with certain bills. And if it's enough bills, that can really kind of, prevent that person from sort of saving and sort of breaking away from, other generational issues. So I think you see that a lot in diverse families, but you also see that in just regular families where this is the first generation that's sort of broken through.